Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to another episode of Talkin' Jazz. We are here in the Chicago Jazz office, and I am sitting here with John Dorhauer.
Yes.
And he has a performance coming up at the Jazz Record Art Collective on November 14th, 9 p.m.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting performance because your big band, the Heisenberg Uncertainty Players.
Yes.
You guys are going to be recreating, not note for note, but recreating the Led Zeppelin recording Houses of the Holy.
That's right.
Now, I have not heard of many big bands doing classic rock to begin with. And we were talking a little bit before we even started rolling that by doing that, you actually just did Abbey Road a little while ago, and maybe this inspired you. So Houses of the Holy, and the Jazz Record Art Collective, by the way, incredible spot, incredible space. And Chris Anderson, who curates that and founded it and started it, always has interesting groups happening. But this is something that I was not even remotely thinking could happen with a big band. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about this. First off, let's talk about the gig coming up, November 14th. Mm-hmm. Why Houses of the Holy?
So, as you mentioned, we did the Beatles' Abbey Road before for this series, and our goal with that was to try to take an album that a lot of people knew and loved, but present it in a completely new way. And whereas I think most groups that play for this series try to take a jazz record and recreate it as closely as they can to the original, we're trying to do something a little different where we take something that is in a completely different idiom and then adapt it for this setting. And so for the reason why I chose this was, first of all, I really love the album, and it had to be something where I would be willing to delve that deeply into it and spend countless hours going through the music. But it also had to be something that I thought was malleable enough to be adapted for a jazz big band setting. And I think Houses of the Holy really checked both boxes for me in terms of it has a really interesting collection of songs that cover a wide swath of styles, but they're also ones that I think are not easily adaptable, but I think are close enough to this style that we're looking for where it works well.
So are you a fan of Led Zeppelin, obviously? I mean,
I am. Yeah, I actually took a class on them when I was doing my master's and kind of dug deeply into each of their
They have a
albums.
class of Led Zeppelin class?
I know.
What school did you go to?
I did my master's at Roosevelt University.
And they have a Led Zeppelin class?
They had a Led Zeppelin class.
Oh, who taught it?
Dr. Stuart Fultz.
Ah, okay. I thought maybe Wertico did because, he's... Paul Wertico.
Yeah.
I figured, I know he's there.
Yeah, and when I was there, he was the head of the jazz at the time. But yeah, Dr. Fultz was one of the theory comp professors, mostly did music theory and classical stuff.
Nice.
But I think he viewed it as this interesting way of like being able to get out of his usual daily routine.
All right, so Houses of the Holy, what were some of the challenges? I mean, so you arranged, and we were talking a little bit before we came on, you play trumpet.
I do.
You're the leader.
Yes.
You write original music, which we'll talk about too for this group, because mainly I think this group plays a lot of your original tunes.
Yes.
But with this, you obviously had to transcribe, you arranged, and then figured out how to incorporate a big band into the 4-piece rock band setting and make it all work. Is there a vocalist involved in this?
No vocals.
Okay, so all the melodies are just instrumental.
Yes.
So you had to deal with that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so where was the starting point?
So once I decided to arrange this album in its entirety, what I did was I took all 8 tracks and then thought big picture about what do I want to do with each of them, considering not only how to effectively adapt each individual song, but how they would work collectively into an effective unit, where like I didn't want to do the same thing for all 8 arrangements. Like I didn't want to make them all pretty close to the record, but I also didn't want to all have them be just like swing tunes. Like, so each arrangement kind of takes a different angle towards it, and so there's like 8 different perspectives on the songs from the album.
Okay. So you're actually rearranging and reimagining these tunes in a big band thing. So some of them are swinging, like what tune would be like, give us a tune, give us a feel, give us, well, maybe one of the more challenging ones for you to actually sit down and arrange and put together for a big band.
So I think the one that was probably the most difficult to adapt was Jamaica, the reggae tune from the album, both because I think that one is probably one of the most divisive tracks that Led Zeppelin either record, where like you either love it or you hate it. And I knew like adapting that for a big band was going to be somewhat of a challenge, partially because of the split takes on it. So that's one of the ones where I took a little further away from the original, where my arrangement ends up being kind of like a D'Angelo Voodoo era type funk, where the chords are pretty different. The melody is largely intact, but kind of adapted for this new harmonic language, and the groove is completely different on it.
How do you handle the guitar solos and things like that on there? So do you break them up? Is it just like, are they blowing? Are they sticking around? So, because some of those guitar solos that are on there actually almost are like another melody line, really.
Right. Yeah, I don't know that I actually transcribed any of Page's guitar solos. The only arrangement that I did that features a guitar solo is The Song Remains the Same, which I kind of see as like Page's showcase for that album. Yeah. He's just kind of blowing most of the whole way through that song. And so our guitarist is soloing on that, but he's improvising. So he's not trying to transcribe or play Page's original solos verbatim. The other ones are either adapted for other instruments, or the form was kind of manipulated in a way where that guitar solo section isn't really in my arrangement of it. Okay. But it is a 17-piece big band, and everyone in the band has at least one solo throughout the course of our
So I'm always curious. So this is November 14th, 9 p.m., Thursday night. Fulton Street Art Collective is where the Jazz Record Art Collective is, and it's the jazzrecordartcollective.com, or you can check out John's band's website, huplayers.com. Now, you also talked a little bit about, before we came on, about how you write a lot of stuff, a lot of original stuff. I'm always curious, a band like this, a big band, first of all, it's a really tall order to get a big band together on a regular basis.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if you know that or not.
I've come to learn that, yeah.
and then to play original tunes, or even this project in front of people. And then I would imagine you have to at least do one rehearsal, or something has to happen before you actually go and do this. So what made you want to take on the task of running your own big band? That's what I'm always curious about.
Well, I started this band when I graduated from Roosevelt and got my master's, which was in 2011. And at that point, I knew that this was something that I wanted to do, and came to the realization that I had both enough charts written that I could form a book, and knew enough people where I could at least start reaching out to see if there was an interest for it. And then ended up, over the course of a month or so, finding enough musicians that I knew that were willing to give it a go, and then found a place that would let us play without having performed before. And then it's just kind of has built from there. We've been playing monthly for the past 6 years now. And so that's really kind of allowed us to expand our book and reach out to other places and set up some kind of more unique performance opportunities like what we're doing here for Fulton Street.
Where do you play on a monthly basis? We should plug that, right?
Yeah, so as a big band, we play the second Sunday of every month at Phyllis's Musical Inn, which is in Wicker Park. And that's, you mentioned we probably rehearse. That effectively is our rehearsal, where a lot of months, especially winter months where there's not a big turnout, we'll literally spend 20 minutes rehearsing a tune on the stage. Yeah. But we'll, for the past couple of years, I've been bringing in 1 or 2 new charts every month, and so we'll read those down at the gig, perhaps rehearse if we have the opportunity to.
And you're that I know how hard it is, how time consuming, I should say, it is to arrange tunes, let alone compose tunes and arrange tunes. So
sure.
What did you go to? What were you a compositional major, master's in arrangement?
So I did my master's in composition, but with actually a classical emphasis.
Oh, okay.
But while I was there at Roosevelt, I played in the jazz ensembles and wrote some music for them as well. But that wasn't what I was primarily studying.
So this is a passion of yours, obviously, and
Yes.
I think that being able to put together a big band, run a big band, get gigs for a big band, keep the big band together, and keep them working is like a monumental feat. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
I mean, that's, you know,
I
and then
appreciate
to be
that.
able to put this kind of stuff together. Now, you still play trumpet, but you don't play trumpet in the band?
That's correct. I only direct.
So
for
are you playing
performances.
jazz around town, or what else are you, I mean?
Yeah, there's a couple big bands that I play in regularly. There's the Blue Shift Big Band. Joel Bear, I know, is
Yep.
a friend of the pod here.
Yep.
And then the Shout Section Big Band is
Sure.
another group around town that plays regularly. And I actually write music for both of those groups as well.
Yeah. Wow, man. It just sounds like a lot of work, but hey.
It's a lot of fun work is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. So November 14th, 9 p.m., let's talk a little bit about, so that's at the Jazz Record Art Collective at the Fulton Street Art Collective. I got it all correct. 1821 West Hubbard Street, by the way, in Chicago. 9 p.m. start. I think it's like $10. I
Yes.
think is what it normally is. Maybe $5 for students if they come, or
That's
something
correct.
like that.
Yeah.
So check all that out. Of course, Chris Anderson. I mean, you know, this series has grown immensely. I mean, it's really congratulations to Chris too,
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And obviously, you guys, everybody loves working with Chris. That's otherwise people wouldn't keep going back and doing all of this.
Yeah,
stuff.
Chris
So
is great.
It's really one of those wonderful things. Let's talk a little bit about your original stuff.
Sure.
And you said you just put an album out recently.
So we recorded an album, and it's going to be released sometime around March of next year.
Okay, and that's all your original stuff.
Yes, there's one arrangement, but it's a public domain piece. It's actually an arrangement of a symphony by Mahler, a movement of it.
So I'm always curious when I talk to a composer. How do you? What is your process for getting the idea? Because I've talked to different people, all different people, and everybody's got a different process usually. I mean, some people can sit down and write. Some people have to be moving around, and all of a sudden they get a melody in their head. They do this, they do that. They start to some people put together melodies into different movements and then put it all together into one piece. There's a lot of different processes. You have a process that you kind of go through to start creating?
Each song's a little different. Like, for example, sometimes I'll get an idea for a tune, or usually just like a hook, just a simple little motif, and then figure out what that is and then develop it. Sometimes I'll actually like force myself to sit down at a piano and then develop ideas that way.
So a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people, if they sit down at a piano and force themselves, it's like a recipe for nothing ever happening.
Yeah.
So you're actually somebody that if you sit there and do it, something's going to happen probably that you're
Generally,
going to get
yeah.
something out of it. That's
Yeah,
great.
I've been doing it long enough where like I feel a certain level of comfort with my process that's allowed me to get to that point. It certainly wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can work that way, certainly. And because I come from a perhaps more classical background, I've always done classical and jazz, but again, that's what I studied. I tend to think a little more big picture and look at the broader form than I think what a lot of jazz composers do, not to paint with too broad of a brush. But anytime I'm writing a piece of music, I try to think on the global scale, like what I want to accomplish. And I try to think a little bit more outside of the box as far as like trying to consciously avoid like a solo head type structure, for example.
Yeah. So you're actually composing something. It's almost like a hybrid of classical and jazz, because if you're thinking from the standpoint of how you're thinking about composing, because if a jazz guy sits down just straight, okay, A, B, A, 16 bar bridge, 8 bars, you're done. Here's the melody and everything else. Sounds to me like you're taking some of your classical background, some of your jazz background, probably all the other genres of music that you like as well, and mixing them all together, and you're processing your creativity that way.
Yeah. I try not to think of what I'm writing as fitting in any one particular style or genre, but try to think like what do I need to accomplish with the music? So I don't go into it thinking like I'm going to think classically in this part of it, but I'm going to think jazz in that part. Like I'm just trying to write with my voice and use tools and skills from all the different styles that I'm familiar with to my advantage.
So talk a little bit about Phyllis's Musical In again. What time, what day, so everybody can know, and we'll plug that too.
Yeah, so it's the second Sunday of every month at 7 o'clock at Phyllis's, which is 1800 West Division in Wicker Park. And then we also play as a small group, as a 6-piece version of the band, on the first Monday of every month at this venue called the Chicago Magic Lounge.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's been open for about a year and a half in its current location. It's at 5050 North Clark Street. And that's a really interesting performance because they have magicians that go around and do table magic while we perform.
Oh.
And then one of the magicians comes up during our break and does a headlining set from the stage. But like our book is kind of unique and quirky, and so I feel like that's like aesthetically about as perfect of a match for us as you could find.
Oh, that's cool. I've heard of that place. I've never been there, so I've got to come check it out sometime.
It's legitimately entertaining. Like the first time I went, I was kind of expecting the magic to be a little hokey, but like it's like as a fully formed adult man, like I was thoroughly entertained by what they did there.
That's awesome. All right, so that is the first Monday.
First Monday, it's 7:30 to 9:30.
And then the second Sunday of every month at Phyllis's, which Phyllis's has been around forever. Brian O'Hearn's band plays there on Monday nights.
They're a gallery.
Oh, Gallery Cabaret.
They're very similar bars.
Yeah, they are.
Dive bars in Chicago.
Yeah, I know. I've played them both. They meld together. And,
Yep.
and if you stay there long enough, you think you're at one or the other. It doesn't even matter when you leave. So there you go. All right. And, of course, November 14th, 9 p.m. at the Fulton Street Art Collective. The Heisenberg Uncertainty Players. I said that correct?
Heisenberg.
Yes. See, I don't have my glasses on. Heisenberg. How'd you come up with the name?
So, short version is it's a Breaking Bad reference. When the group formed, the show was, I believe, in between its second and third seasons, and so it was very much a critical darling, but not near the cultural phenomenon that it would become.
Right.
And so at the time, it was a bit more subversive of a reference, but these days when we play, it's like, oh, I love Breaking Bad too.
Now I can pronounce it if you told me that before. Heisenberg. All right, Heisenberg Uncertainty Players. Fulton Street Art Collective, November 14th. JazzRecordArtCollective.com. John, thanks so much for coming down. And
thank you for having me. It's been fun.
I'm glad you reached out because I'm always interested in people that are creating things like this and doing, especially running a big band like we talked about. I mean, I know the process and I know, hey man, I can't make it, and it's like 2 hours before you've got to play, and you actually do need that other saxophone player because it's a 17-piece band. So
right.
I get it. So it's very impressive. I'm glad you guys can do it. Keep us posted on the new recording. Of course, huplayers.com for all the information, all the different dates where they're playing, and check them out on November 14th. I'm going to try to get there definitely, and hopefully John will see you that night. Hopefully I might see you that night, or hopefully if we don't, we will see you somewhere out on the scene.